You're watching Grillos AftershockXL. Look at that. We worked all morning for that fucking thing. Good job, Hudson. I'm sweating. So you're on another edition of Grillos AftershockXL here in Hammerhead Studios in wonderful Las Vegas. First, I got to start off. I want to give a little shout out to my girl, Cammy. I'm watching you, girl. Come on, Chester Wrestling. Cammy, my little cousin, she's a wrestler. I'm so proud of her.
Chester, Pennsylvania?
Chester, New York.
Chester
the Molester, New York.
Okay.
So I am here with someone that is very, very special and dear to my heart. This is Wendy Kaufman.
Thank you.
Or as everybody probably knows her as Wendy the Snapple Lady. And I moved to Las Vegas, and where we've been friends for a very long time.
Yes, we have.
We've been friends since probably 1992.
You know what? I got to Snapple in 91, and you started with Howard back in those days, and we grew up together.
Yeah, we did, very much so. So when I took the plunge and came out here to Vegas, Wendy snatched me up. As soon as I got here, I landed on the plane, and Wendy said, "You better get over here right now." So she has now become her and her husband, Steve, another Steve in my life. They take very good care of me. They're now, Wendy's my Jewish Vegas mother.
Yes. And I'm happy to be that.
Yeah. So, but a lot of people still know who you are. You're not fallen out of mainstream media. Like, people still recognize you and they know who you are.
It's sort of a funny thing because people do double takes. They don't really know who I am. They know that I look familiar to them. And once they find out the Snapple Lady, they're always so nice and great. But, it's been 30, 35 years ago. So it's not, yesterday.
Yeah.
So it's very, very shocking.
It's because of you, because you have such a wonderful, glowing personality, and you really connect with people through that personality. And I think that I remember. So now let's get to the start with the people that probably say that the younger generation that may not know who you are, and that don't understand the significance of the role you played, because Snapple is still a thriving company. You can't go anywhere without having Snapple. It's got shelves and shelves of all different kinds of shit.
Not like it was, though.
No, but so let's get to the beginning. You grew up in Long Island, correct?
Neither is Howard, by the way.
Yeah, well.
It's very interesting because we really did have like a similar ride. He went for longer, but I want to say, but both of them are not what they were.
We'll get to Howard in a minute.
Okay,
We're with you right now.
Talk about us.
Yeah, it's just the battle of the ADDs. Whose attention span can stand longer? Say hi to Rich.
It's good to meet you.
I was trying to sneak through quietly so I didn't interrupt your show.
Don't worry, he'll edit.
That's Professional Tax Alliance right there.
Nice to know Professional Tax Alliance. Get somebody local.
There you go. So you grew up in Long Island, right?
Yes.
What part?
I grew up in a place called North Woodmere, which was part of the Five Towns area.
Okay.
Which was right by Kennedy Airport. So I have great stories of all those days with all the thugs that were over there. They all lived in my neighborhood, went to my schools, and every movie that's Goodfellas and, what was the Leonardo DiCaprio one? Wolves of Wall Street.
Yes.
I went to school with all those guys.
Yeah, me too. Just watch your foot.
Okay. Sorry.
We'll do that. So, so how did Snapple came about from Long Island? It's a Long Island-based company.
Yes.
At least it was.
Yes.
So, and you were friends with the family that started Snapple. How did Snapple actually get started?
Okay, there were three really great friends, Arnie, Lenny, and Jaime, who were all from Brooklyn, and Arnie was in the health food business on the Lower East Side. It was really a trashy area back in the day. And his two friends, Lenny and Jaime, were brother-in-laws, but they were in the window washing business.
So remember, everybody, this is the origin of Snapple.
Oh.
Snapple is a huge force in the market today one guy was a health food.
This is how when they were young, this is where they all started out. Greenberg's, health food store and window washers. They all got together and they decided to go into sort of the restaurant business, and they started to go upstate and work with distributors. They started to make mayonnaise, and they started to go into the chicken business and the egg business. And that's how Snapple started. Then they started to add to that portfolio drinks, natural drinks. And the drinks really caught on, but they had their best, whatever, their company that they would deliver all these chickens to in the to the restaurants in New York is who they sold to. All those upstate businesses.
Because I remember when Snapple first came around, and first of all, it was very hard to find. But when you did find it, it blew any other iced tea out. Like iced tea was always so sugary, and like you drink it and you didn't really quench your thirst from an iced tea because it was just full of sugar. There was Nestea, or there was no like I guess market for
rich.
iced tea. Yeah,
it wasn't a rich, deep. What happened was we were the first to brew iced tea.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
that's why.
it was just stirring in sugar or whatever with machinery equipment, and we made it hot tea and then packaged
you
it.
could taste the difference when you got an old school Snapple from back in the day. As soon as you drank it, it actually quenched your thirst, and you wanted another one.
But I want to go back with you even, because when Arnie was in the health food business, he had a whole line of drinks that were juice drinks. And do you remember Vitamin Supreme?
I know there's vitamin water because it was
no,
that.
Vitamin Supreme. I mean, these were really great juice drinks that he had that were in smaller bottles. But Vitamin Supreme was your daily vitamin intake, and people who were healthy and people not so healthy. My favorite was an apricot Royale drink. He had every flavor, and really, that's how the guys got together. They started in the beginning with a soda line and this juice line.
How did the name come about? Because when you think Snapple, you're thinking apple juice. And, it doesn't have any association to iced tea.
When they started to do different flavors, they started to, work with the apples. And they left the apple juice drinks that they came up with in a warehouse. And the warehouse went up to like 90 degrees. It was an apple soda. It was an apple drink, and it fermented because it was so hot that they all exploded. And they came up with their name Snapple from all of the exploded apple juices.
Wow. Yo, you can curse on here, by the way. It's okay. But so Snapple comes about, and what happens with Snapple is it started to take on a whole new. They got bigger and bigger. Now you're finding it in stores. I remember specifically because my uncle had a deli out in Long Island, and he carried it. And my one-time girlfriend, she loved the mint Snapple iced tea.
Okay, that was like I could talk about that.
Yeah.
Because ultimately that was the type A personality at Snapple. So the people that drank mint tea were the most vocal, the most hysterical, the most hilarious people that if they couldn't find their tea, they went batshit out of this world.
I remember buying a case. I would drove all the way out to Long Island to get a case of mint Snapple iced tea for Christmas for our Christmas present, but it was really good.
It was a delicious drink, but I knew when they dropped that flavor, because down the road we had gone through so many iterations, Grillo, of different owners, and they finally got rid of the mint tea, and I knew that was going to be really the end of the business, because those were the real vocal people that were out there that loved us, but it was funny because I got there, they had already had the juices, and they had fabulous sodas, passion fruit juice. They had True Root Beer, which was a clear root beer. They had True
I
Cola.
remember that.
Do you remember?
Yeah. Okay, they were in an interesting bottle. Yeah. Oh wow. Okay. Yeah. I remember that. Yeah. Oh my God, the root beer was awesome.
Later, where they got famous is they started to do the teas and they started to do the lines of lemonades. But those were the first beginnings of Snapple, that they were healthier drinks that went along with, their business with the restaurant businesses, with juices and healthy sodas. And that's how it all started. Once they started to do that, they started to really make money. They moved to Long Island. There was a real call for it. And all of the distributors who had trucks, they were called Nest Fresh. They were all in the egg business. These guys in mayonnaise business, they became the initial distributors of Snapple. So we really started out in a very unusual place with all these with these little trucks with chickens on the sides, and those were the first Snapple trucks.
And so now Snapple starts to pick up. It gets picked up by store after store, and then all of a sudden now you guys have a real presence in New York.
Well, how that happened was partially because of the marketing. We had very little money at that time to work with, and it was really the beginning of WNBC with Imus and Howard Stern.
Yeah.
And then on the other side was Rush Limbaugh. And what happened was we went to WNBC, and Imus really was running the show at that time. Later, what happened was when they drifted apart, Snapple opted to stay with Howard Stern and give him the advertising, and Howard started to do live reads and was very, very thankful to us because it was Howard and Dial a Mattress. With
the
two.
But it was so like huge, and it was like Howard Stern and Snapple were like one and the same.
And Rush Limbaugh, who we had on the other side, and Rush, when he tasted our raspberry tea, he contacted our offices because we were really with Howard at that point. But Rush loved the raspberry, and when we finally developed the peach tea, and asked us if he could do our commercials. So we made a deal with both of them, and they were unbelievably perfect. We covered everything.
I'm surprised that Howard didn't have a problem with that, because he hated Rush so bad.
So in the beginning, he was so grateful to have a live advertiser that went with him.
Yeah.
And it was not even an issue at that point. Not at all. What was interesting, which I always just scratched my head, is that Rush and Howard had the same birthday.
Oh, yeah, that's right. January 11th, I think, was like, no, 12th, January 12th.
January 12th,
Yeah.
which was just so crazy that they were so opposite, but there was no fighting between them. They had two totally different domains.
Yeah, they did. But it's so weird because, I later on in life, now that when you worked for Howard, you hated who he hated. You know what I'm saying? And I didn't realize that Rush Limbaugh really was a strong voice in the Republican Party and everything. I probably could have used him right now, but I didn't understand it until like years later, where I actually did some research, and it was like, why did I hate someone that I didn't even ever listen to? You know what I'm saying?
You just did by osmosis because it's around you.
Yeah.
But the thing is that if you are in the job of marketing, that's brilliant marketing. And what happened is that they started to talk about flavors that were coming, or flavors that were very local to New York. So people started to go into local gas stations and bodegas and started yelling at the people to start carrying Snapple. And that's really the only way that we grew our brand, because these guys were on the air talking about us.
How did you know them?
I met them because in the beginning I was working. Okay, so part of my story is I was best friends with Arnie, one of the founder's sons. He grew up with me, went to high school with me, was a few years older, and Arnie, through Michael, knew that I was having a problem with my family business because it was the 80s and I was doing cocaine and
I can't believe that. Like, you're like the most honest, sweet person. I can't see you fucking blasting a couple of rounds. You know what I'm saying?
Can I tell you something? Nobody, even my assistant said, I just can't even imagine. I was a crazy cokehead, and aside from that, I was smoking.
So when you were doing those commercials, you were like all zipped up?
No,
Oh,
it was
okay.
after. So
Okay.
This is the story of what happened. So I'm smoking 3-4 packs of cigarettes a day because I'm constantly like that. And I'm working in my father's business. I had gone to Syracuse University. I became a film major. My mother said, "Are you crazy? We're going to spend that money for you to go to school and be an imbecile film major?" And Rodney, she said, "Let her at least, go into accounting or business or something." And my father was like, "Let her do what she wants to do." And eventually I did get a job in the film business afterwards, but they sort of loved me in sales. I was great always.
What did you do in the film
in
business?
sales? You know what? I worked for the first motion graphics, animation, and special effects company. At that point, it was the beginning of Tron, which was the first motion graphics animation. And, that was a Disney movie, but we were doing commercials like Silkians and all those brand new. We were working with the people from Monty Python that was starting to, it was a company that was like an independently held company.
Wow.
So we were doing segments in movies.
So that must have pissed your mother off. You actually went to school and got a job with what you studied.
I did, but you know what? But I wasn't really doing the filmmaking. And the more I was doing the filmmaking, the more I realized it was like watching grass grow and that I really should have been in the television business. But no matter, I was there, and they kept holding me back because they loved me as a salesperson. And, finally they were asking me to go get coffee. Like it was sort of like the Howard Stern show, because they hired me for something, and then the next thing it was coffee and cleaning the office. And finally one day I said to my father, "I didn't get hired to be the fucking housekeeper over there."
No shit.
And my father said to me, "Then go tell them to go fuck themselves and quit, because you know what? That's not what they should be paying you for." And I did. I literally said, "Fuck you," left, and then came back that night to take all my things and other things out of the office. I was dressed in all black, over at the Gray Bar building in New York, and left. And Arnie, what happened is, then I went to work for my father. And while I was working for my dad, and my dad was very interesting, he was in the steel business, but he was in an industry that was called tin plate. And it's not like prime steel, but it's softer steel. So you use it for butter cookie tins, like that kind of. So if it gets a pinhole in it and it's not perfect, you can throw in a few cookies, but you can't put motor oil in it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, sure.
So anyhow,
1 second, hold on. Hudson, could you shut the kitchen lights off? Thank you. So I go ahead.
So you could use it for certain applications, and you couldn't use it for others. And we had machinery and all sorts of equipment that we could cut all of the imperfections out and sell it as primary from the mills who didn't want to have that. They weren't in the business of selling secondary products, with like seconds. So anyhow, the tops, the caps of Snapple bottles ended up being our product from American Can and National Can or whatever. And one day they were going to go on strike, and Arnie called and said, "Do me a favor, just protect us," And I'm like, "Arnie, I would do anything for you. Don't worry about it." And from there, I talked to Arnie a little bit more, and I told him, that it wasn't so great, my family business, but I also was getting very, very much more addicted to the drugs, the alcohol, the pills. I didn't even know what I was taking. And finally, my family, because it was the family business, had an intervention with me, and I ended up being sent to my first mental institution, which was like a 28-day. It was a 28-day program.
Did they call it a mental institution back then, or was it a rehab?
They called it rehab, but it really was, when you really got down to brass tacks. The eating disability people would go to one side, the drug addicts would go to another side, and they would keep you for 28 days. In my case, they kept me for 45, and then they called me in and said, "You're going to die. You're not going to survive because I was 31 at that point, and in fairness, what I want to say is I was old enough to know that what they were telling me was true. I was in a lot of trouble. I knew I was in a lot of trouble. I was very glad my family had the intervention because I really did need the time. What I didn't realize is that they were going to send me to another place that was going to take away cigarettes, that was going to take away food, that was going to take away any kind of freedom that I had, break you down and build you back up. And it's called a therapeutic community. And that's a real mental institution. And I ended up getting locked up. My parents drove me there, and I was there for about another 9 months. But so my 28 days turned out to be a 10, 11-month ordeal that I was gone. And it was like walking into the Stepford Wives, because they really had to teach you all over again how to behave. And they took everything away, and you had to wear dresses. Me, because I was funny, I would sit at lunch or dinner and I wasn't allowed to talk to anybody. And I had to wear a big zipper all the time to remind me that I couldn't talk, because she would scream at me, the lady who owned the place.
Yeah.
Take the cotton out of your mouth, out of your ears, and stuff it in your mouth. You know, so it was a really hard, but I ended up getting thrown out of there by accident. They caught me gambling on the Kentucky Derby. So gambling in rehab is not a good thing.
No.
So, you know, that was how I came through. And when I finally left, Arnie called and said, I'd really like for you to come work for me. And I said, I am not fucking working for you. I said, because if I come work for you, I said, then I can't insult you anymore, and I can't be friends with you anymore. And I can't have the relationship that I have, because I had a really special relationship with Arnie.
Yeah.
And finally, the third time, he said, listen, fuck you. He's like, I'm giving you nothing. I'm going to give you $20,000 a year. You're going to have to work your ass off. You're going to have to work for me. And then you're going to have to earn your way. And I said, now I'm going to come work for you.
Okay, yeah.
Because you know what? He took all the pressure off of me. It was a sober job now. And he said, you can make your own way. And I went to Snapple.
And what was your first initial job there?
Like William Morris, you know, when you go there, they put you in the mail room. I went into the order department to learn the flavors and who the distributors were. And I pretty much figured it out pretty fast. And then I went to Arnie and said, listen, you're missing a whole piece of this business that's being neglected, because I noticed that all these letters were starting to come in.
Wow.
And everybody was too busy to do these letters because they were doing their own, growing in the sales department or whatever. Nobody wanted to deal with it. I said to Arnie, let's do this. I said, I need to take a sober job, and I need to get out of my head, which is completely fucked up, to do nice things for other people.
Yeah.
I said, and that is who I am anyway. I said, and I think this company should answer everybody that writes to them. And he sent me to computer school to learn how to do it. And I made myself the head of public relations, and I got a $40,000 raise.
You can hear that outside? Oh, before I want to get back to where you were starting, I just remembered something for a second. Hold on. I got to take the shirt off.
I would take my shirt off for you, but I'm not on.
This was part of working on the Howard Stern show. You got a lot of free shit.
You know, and
this is the original.
That is, and it's a long sleeved one, which is even better.
So I almost forgot that I had this on, just for you.
That's so sweet.
Yeah.
Well, that was part of the gift that I was able to, when people would write, I could send them coupons and send them presents and get involved in their lives. And, you know, it was so important because it was so in the beginning of my sobriety, you know, to just stay the hell out of my own head, because I didn't feel so good about myself. You know, you're just learning to come back and to know who you are as a person, as a human being, as a thoughtful human being. Because sometimes in an addiction, like I became a person that I didn't even recognize anymore.
Sure.
And when you're going to your friends' apartments and you're stealing their sleeping pills and you're stealing their medicine, and and I'm not proud of this. You know what I'm saying? And like from my parents going and stealing money from them, like I looked at myself in the mirror and said, "You are unfucking unrecognizable." It was so horrible, and I knew at that point, like I had to do something, and I was so sick because every day, it had gone from once a week to maybe Friday and Saturday nights, and then it was Sunday. Then it was like, oh, I'm driving back from New Jersey to Manhattan, and I'm going through the Lincoln Tunnel, so I have to party. And every day it became something. And, I was just losing it. And one night I'm sitting on my couch, in Chelsea where I had my apartment, and I had to blow my nose, and I blew the cartilage right out of my head. And I didn't even get scared about it. It was a rite of passage. And I remember it like yesterday, like, oh, now I am in the group. Now I totally officially belong.
Wow.
And I can't even believe it. But, it's funny because even now, if I go like this, like it just sucks right in. I have nothing in the middle of my nose anymore.
And it's sort of kind of what happened to Artie Lang, but his story was worse because I don't know if you know what happened to his nose, because it's so weird because I remember I always bumped into Artie. Artie was always very kind to me. Still, I'm sure he is. He's very he was always down on West 4th Street by Washington Square Park. That's where you go to get shit. And I remember coming out of the A train and walking out, and Artie was standing in the street clenching money, and I knew exactly what he was doing, but he had scabs around both his nostrils. And I was like, how the fuck do you get scabs around your nostrils like that? No, what happened was, he was in a hotel room with a girl, and he was in the shower, and they got a bunch of oxys, and the girl took the glass salt shaker to crush up the oxys. And what she didn't realize is that she was crushing up the oxy, she was crushing the fucking glass.
Oh my God.
So she crushed the glass so fine that it just blended in with the oxys. And then she went out and then Artie came out and saw the lines on the table and snorted the glass.
All the glass.
So he was in the hospital. That's why he was in the hospital for like a couple of days, because he had to fucking clear out. And that's why his nose is flat, because they had to take everything out.
Well, that's why I lost everything.
Yeah.
The first thing that they did in rehab is they had to take me to an ENT, and they had a vacuum. I mean, it was disgusting. They had to literally vacuum out my nose. And it was so upsetting because all I had to do is press on my cheek, and my nose would start bleeding. And I was crawling. It's embarrassing to talk about, but I was so sick from all the coke and all the things that I was taking that I didn't even know that I was taking.
Well, because your body's numb from everything. Your body's not
falling on the floor, and I didn't have to go to Washington Square Park. I had delivery. Maria and Flacco and the boys.
You always have a little nickname for your drug dealer, so it's not like you have it in your phone, drug dealer. You know what I'm saying?
And where I started, this was crazy, and I don't even remember, but there was a guy that I met. He was like the first violinist for the Metropolitan Opera, and he was my first drug dealer, Seymour. And I was literally at home watching the news with my mother, and my mother knew I had this friend who was the first violinist for the Metropolitan Opera, and he got busted, and it was like the front news of CBS, ABC, and NBC.
Isn't that your friend? Oh my God.
My mother calls me in. She's like, "This is your friend." And they took him, and they handcuffed him, and they found all the drugs, and they found all sorts of ammunition and guns.
But I guarantee your first thought was, "Fuck, I gotta find another drug dealer." Fuck, damn, that was good blow.
It was. But
see, when we had the nickname, we called it Furley. Because one friend would do coke and he looked like Mr. Furley. Look, it can torture your face, and so that was our nickname for cocaine, Furley. So the drug dealer became Mr. Furley. does anybody have any Furley?
That's
You
so
know,
funny.
and then when we were kids, when it was weed, because I didn't get into the cocaine scene until my mid to late 30s. But in the weeds, I don't know if you remember, there was a commercial about the applesauce, Mott's applesauce, and we're like, so it was like whoever the commercial was, the kids were calling each other, going, "Hey, you got the Mott's? I got the Mott's."
You got
the
Mott's?
Mott's, because they were the kids wanted who's got the good applesauce.
The,
And then
the
there's
one that I
well,
remember was, remember the egg that they would throw in the pan that would fry?
oh
the,
yeah,
and every night I'm up at 3 o'clock in the
yeah,
morning,
yeah.
4 in the morning with those fucking eggs getting cracked about we're frying my
yeah,
brain.
yeah. This is your eggs on
No
brain on
shit,
drugs.
sure.
So no, when we were kids, if someone had, yo, you got the Mott's, because we were on the phone all, like, so you couldn't say, yo, who's got weed? So, yo, who's got the Mott's? Jeff got the Mott's. All right, good. All right, great. So it's funny how you use like all these code words for drugs when you're around people that don't do drugs.
You know, I had my people, my friend Laura, who was my best friend at the time, she would come in every weekend and she had her people in Queens. So, we were driving around. I remember one night it was -11. We had a really tough go round over there in New York City. And I remember, that they told everybody stay in. And it was before Giuliani had come in and cleaned up 42nd Street.
Yeah.
So it was a mess.
Oh, yeah, I
and there
remember
was a chicken store on 42nd Street. And I'm driving to my drug dealer who lived, on the other side of town. I'm coming from Chelsea and I have to go. So I'm going through 42nd Street, and some guy who is definitely high, he runs in front of my car. I almost hit this guy because he came out from the other side of the street, so anyhow, I get stuck at a light and all of this frozen ketchup and mayo and chicken and French fries are in these ginormous bags that are in front of this chicken restaurant.
Yeah.
And he threw all this shit on my car, and my whole car was the chicken, mayonnaise, mustard.
Was it the Snapple mayonnaise? No.
It was so disgusting. It couldn't
Yeah.
I forgot if Nest Fresh, I forgot what it was all called.
Yeah.
But I'll find out one of these days. But from there, Arnie really was fantastic with me, knew I had the problem, knew that I was special to him, knew that I was really funny, knew that I could hold my own, and went to his partners because they had a rule there, that you were not allowed to hire anybody who was friends of the family or family.
Yeah.
Because family businesses are really traumatizing. And he got the approval, and everybody said to me, we know all about you. And that was really a gift, and I want to say that because I never kept it a secret. I did keep it a secret from all the fans and whatever.
Yeah, well, no, I didn't know until really I came out to Vegas,
that I really told you my story. I told it later after I got fired, I told it, but I didn't want anybody made from the best stuff on earth when I'm like a recovering coke addict,
yeah,
where I didn't even know what the fuck I was
you were
snorting
the best stuff on earth.
So, but can you imagine? Like, they knew that they were going to use me for the commercials, because when we got a new ad agency, as we were growing, it's commensurate how Howard ended up leaving Imus, going on and doing his own show. We were the ones along with Dial a Mattress, that stayed with him. Okay. And he had a loyalty to us. But I never told you the story that I thought that I was going to have a stroke, because he got really mad at us, Howard, after the Selena thing. You were still there.
Oh, I was there 100%.
You were in your glory.
I had to deal with the threats and the people outside, and my mom was, people wanted to
Jackie
kill him.
is shooting guns off in the background.
Yeah,
and
no, that was Fred. Yeah.
And they're going crazy, and we're sponsoring you. And the people who owned us was Quaker Oats at that time.
Yes.
And Quaker, if you remember, did a press conference and said that they were firing Howard Stern.
Yeah, well, I remember that because Howard went on the air and he threw a giant tirade about how fucked up Snapple was, how he put them on the map.
He didn't say Snap. Here's what happened. He ranted and raved about one of his advertisers, and it was on Memorial Memorial Day weekend. And he said, I'm coming back on Monday and I'm going to make the announcement because we're going to have a huge boycott. And
Well,
I called John Rywelski
oh my
and
God,
said, oh
heard
my
that name.
God,
Yeah,
what? You know, he was my guy
Yeah,
over there.
yeah.
And
Forgot about him.
I said, oh my God, I said, everybody's going to come after me because I'm
Yeah.
the spokesperson.
Oh yeah.
And I'm a Howard fan from the old days. This is Quaker.
I remember.
Boycott oatmeal.
I remember that day because the phone lines were going crazy, and I'll never forget this one fan calls up and he goes, I put him through too. He goes, Grillo goes, if Howard told me not to drink fucking water, I'll never drink water again. You think I'm gonna go back and get that buy Snapple? Fuck that.
Because
So-
they sort of knew, but he never did go on the air and boycott it because the people
Well-
behind the scenes, and Gary was on the phone with me, they knew it wasn't me and it wasn't fair that it was going to fall
Oh,
to
yeah.
me as the spokesperson because I was one of the number one people that was friends and a true friend of the Howard Stern
Yeah,
show.
no, definitely.
So Howard didn't. He didn't do it because he knew that it was going to affect my life in a very negative
and
way.
also, if you think about it, I'm sure that the higher ups are going, yo, we got to pay rent. Okay, you're going to boycott a sponsor. What do you think every other sponsor is going to feel? What did they take away? If they stop paying us, you're going to fucking make people not buy their product? You can't do that in a business.
But they never talked to us about it. They made a unilateral decision over at Quaker. What we would do is people would get pissed at your show all the time. People would get pissed all the time if Rush said something, and there was always letters that you were going to get. So we would pull off the air for 2 weeks, and then we would be right back on because people have a memory of a toad.
Yeah.
Nobody remembers anything because the news cycle is so fast. So that's what we did. And when they literally did that without talking to anybody at Snapple, it was such a huge slap across the face to us because they just went and hijacked our brand from us.
Did any of those crazy Howard Stern fans do anything stupid towards you?
I have to say that he never went on and said to boycott Snapple. It was after the long weekend. It was like Memorial Day weekend.
Yeah.
So he left it alone. By that time, John was in the picture and everybody else. I was in the picture. Gary was in the picture. You were in the picture. Everybody had to be in the picture because the whole thing, they didn't know all the people that were working in my office. They knew me. It would be a total devastation of me personally.
Yeah. And what do you remember the first time that you got recognized?
Oh my God. Yes. First of all, I have a great story. When they came to me and decided to use me for the commercials, because the letters was my domain, that was really something that I loved, and I knew it was good for my head.
For the people that may not know, that Wendy used to read all the fan mail that Snapple got, and that was part of your persona, who you were for Snapple. You read the fan mail, and that became commercials. You always read somebody's like really cool letter on your commercials, and it was like part of the endearing thing. Like everybody must have been like, oh, I hope she reads mine.
Well, it's before the computers and before social media.
Yeah.
So what was happening is we were getting like 1,000 letters per week, stamped letters that were coming. And you want to know something? Nobody was paying attention. And I realized from when I was a kid, I wrote one fan letter, one, to Barry Williams. Remember Barry Williams from the Brady Bunch?
Yeah.
So anyhow, I had a huge crush on Barry Williams, and Tiger Beat was having a contest, and I wanted to win my date with Barry Williams, but they never wrote me back. But somewhere in the back of my head, I just felt it would have been nice if they said, thank you for writing to Tiger Beat.
Yeah,
it's so nice of you to buy our magazine. Unfortunately, you didn't win.
A form letter, and then there's little Wendy waiting every day for the mail to come.
And that's why I did it, because for two reasons. One, I knew that health-wise, I had to stay out of my own head because I'm now recovering. I'm in my first year of recovery.
Yeah.
So I know it's all about doing nice things for other people. I now have letters and all these people that I can focus on.
Wow.
And from that, all of a sudden we got a new director of marketing because it was getting too much. Arnie couldn't, run the company with his two guys. I needed somebody that I could work with directly.
Yeah.
And he's watching me with the letters, and he was a copywriter for a big main advertising agency in New York City. And he called our new advertising agency and said, "You guys, I know exactly what the next campaign is going to be, and you have to meet her."
That's great.
And that's what happened, is that all of a sudden they knew I was a cokehead from a year ago. I was only off drugs for a year. And because of Arnie and because of all the fights that happened in that office, Arnie believed in me. He says, "We hired an ad agency and they want her. So why would we not want her if we're paying them a lot of fucking money to tell us what to do.
Yeah.
And if we don't do what they tell us, then we're a bunch of schmucks. Let's go with her." And he believed in me more than I believed in myself.
Way to go, Arnie.
And it was unbelievable what he did for me. And when it was a success, I remember being in his office, and I remember, coming in and saying to him, "I don't even know how to thank you for giving me my life back." And he started to cry and said, "You did it. I didn't do anything. I always believed in you, but you did this."
Yeah, that's so
and
cool.
And I called up my parents when I was going to be on the commercials, and my mother gets on the phone and she's like, "Wow," and I'm like, "Wow." And I'm like, "I'm calling because I'm going to be the star of the next Snapple campaign." And my mother was like, "What are you talking about? You're a fat Jewish girl from Long Island. What are you even saying? You're a drug addict." She starts screaming,
"Irish, Italian, Jewish, all the fucking same."
"Ronnie, get on the phone." My father gets on. My mother is like, "She's saying she's going to be the star of the next Snapple campaign."
Yeah.
And my father doesn't say anything. She's like, "You're fat. Why would they put you? You're fat. Model. You're
so
an actress."
Nice. So
but
nice.
that was and I just said, "Look, you'll have to take it up with them, but they're putting me on TV," and it was just a huge hit.
So you went from $20,000 a year to what?
Okay, so in a year and a half, now I have to be in SAG and AFTRA.
Sure.
And while I was the woman that broke the glass ceiling in the beverage business, I was still getting the most minor pay, so I want to say I should have done much, much better, but they took care of me enough that after the guys left and sold out their shares, I did get an agent who is a wonderful friend of mine still today, Mark Itkin, who was a big shot over at William Morris, and he brought my contract. I had the contract and everything, and we worked out a deal that whatever he could get me at that time, it was like 250,000 they were going to give me. He said, "Whatever you can get her over 250, he could get a 10% or whatever that I would give him, or 5%, because I really got the whole deal." And he got me 500,000 a year with at that time with Quaker Oats.
So now,
but that was the end of me at Quaker Oats.
Well, I was going to say, but so that now when Quaker Oats took over, you still had your same job with Snapple.
I had the same
job. Was
job.
Arnie still involved?
He was. All of them were for about a year. So I had 2 years with the regular Snapple guys to do the commercial. And then by the third year, they had to keep me because they were starting to film and it was too late. They bought the brand where they still had to do a third year of my commercials.
Okay.
And then they fired me.
Well, did you got residuals for your commercials, correct?
What they did is
they
bought a lot of. It was sort of a buyout. I was getting, a lot from cable,
Yeah.
and a lot of, not network stuff. That's what the 500 was for.
Yeah.
So it was an all-in sort of deal for
Well,
that.
some people don't understand if you're an actor and you're in a commercial, it could change your life. A lot of people don't realize that, but the commercial is like on, and you're getting money. You're getting money constantly because every time it runs, you get a percentage of something.
Right.
And there are some actors that start their careers from commercials, like Jason Alexander, and oh God, the guy from Roseanne.
John Goodman.
John Goodman was in a lot of commercials. He was like Mr. Macho Man, but they got their start. But you also can make a living off of one commercial.
Oh my God! If it's picked up and it's big and you get big residuals from it, but you know what? I did in the 3 years 37 commercials. I did all of the radio. It was worth such a fortune, but I was a newbie. I was just coming in. I wasn't true.
You weren't doing drugs anymore, and you were famous now.
And now I'm famous, and they gave me the opportunity, which was worth millions to me because they helped to get me. It helped me on my way to sobriety anyway.
Yeah, sure.
But it did hurt me because years later, it's like Superman. I was the Snapple lady, and while many other beverage companies came to me to leave Snapple and go with them, I was not a traitor, and I loved Snapple, and I loved Arnie, and I loved my bosses, and there was no amount of money. And there was some money offered for me to switch brands, and I would never do it because I had a moral and I had a value.
Well, you're much like me. You're loyal to a fault.
Yeah.
And I'm very loyal, like to everything.
Like you were there for like 10 years, though. 10,
yeah,
11.
I was there for about 8.
But I mean, that was a long time, and you got very, very famous. And you were doing
I never
all sorts of appearances.
I didn't think about being famous. How could you think you're famous when the person that you work for really doesn't think he's famous? You know what I'm saying? Like, who am I to think or treat anybody any different? Because, although Howard might be who he was on the air, and you would know as well as I do that off the air, he was a different person.
He was a really nice person,
which kind of made it harder for me to step up and get the money or whatever I deserved. So, but I was loyal. My loyalty was strong with him, and it was, I would say, till when I left on. I knew if I stayed, they were going to fire me because I was getting angrier and angrier every day.
But you had a right to be because you were a personality. You were a huge piece of the show.
I didn't go there for that.
But it doesn't matter. You put in. I'm reading Gorilla Parts right now. You know what I'm saying?
I had to. She's not a reader.
I bought it though. He didn't give it to me. I bought it.
Thank you very much. You can get it on Amazon and it's on Audible as well. But no, what happened was, you take me to dinner, and then we'd be in the middle of a conversation, and you said you were reading the book, and I caught you. I went, you didn't read the book because you wouldn't ask me that question.
Well,
tell a lot of what happened in the book.
Well, now I'm like on page 50, so I'm getting there. I'm not one of the great readers because of my focus, Grillo. My focus.
I made it easy for people like us. It's like the same thing. I'm telling this story. I appreciate that.
I do want to say it's a really fun, informative book, and I wanted to just go in and say, because I'm such a, I'm so naive in so many things, and you are just, such a big man on campus going out there that I would have probably been afraid of you.
Oh yeah.
When I was younger, because part of the reason I was so ashamed of who I was, because at a certain point I weighed, my husband disagrees with this because I always had a very outward, very, very positive persona, but in my soul, I was always ashamed, and I came from a family, that looked at you on the outside and judged you by your outside. And I weighed at my worst 260. And that's why I love my husband as much as I do, because not only did he love me so much at 260, but now he loves me less at 150.
No, you look fantastic. You look younger than you did, now.
I felt very bad. I really had to find my way, and I really needed to fit better in my skin, and Snapple was such a big part of my life. Stephen was such a big part of my life. He came in at a really critical time when I was 39. Like when I was 39, he was in Florida, and I got to see him in Florida. And what happened to him, because I met Stephen in college, so I want to just say that about him. I met him like the first day of college, and it was my birthday, and his father was the chief financial guy over at Hershey's. So what's the way to my heart, baby?
Yeah,
Before
chocolate.
Snapple, chocolate. So I got these 10, 20-pound Hershey bars from him. And
it was love at first bite.
And I always loved, I always had a special spot. And then he went into later the television business, and he's at his office, and he's living in Georgia or in California. And all of a sudden I come on to 4 different channels, that they are watching commercials.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And I'm everywhere. And he's like, God, I just got to call her. And he did.
That's
Got
so
Tracy,
cool.
my assistant. And Tracy's like, do you remember some guy, Steve Hawkins, from Syracuse? And I'm like, oh my God.
It's Chocolate Boy.
Actually, they called him they were the Drex back in the day.
Okay.
He was like King Drek. I'm like, oh my God. And Drek is a Yiddish word. Do you know? Drek is for garbage shit.
Because I do know a lot of Yiddish because I was in Grandma Sylvia's funeral.
So
Alles in name, ich ne still by Canaan.
Oh my God.
All by one is by no one.
And mine was gay kakana from Yam, which is go shit in the ocean.
Howard used to say that. So no, but like you grew up in Brooklyn. There's Yiddish is part of like the
part of the culture.
Yeah. So some people go like I'll say something and they'll go, how do you know that? Like Jewish people, I grew up in Brooklyn.
Exactly.
But it didn't make a difference if you were Jewish. It was part of like how you spoke.
And I grew up like you grew up with the Jews in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
I grew up with the Italians at Kennedy Airport, was less than a mile off of the flight.
We were close because I was in Canarsie, so I grew up with the planes over my.
And you say in your book, the Belt Parkway, instead of going to it, would go through it.
Yeah.
And we would go through, and you would go to King's Plaza, and that's where
I worked at Wilson's House of Suede and Leather.
Yeah. But that was our turf.
Yeah, sure.
That was all of that. When the plane crash happened at Kennedy Airport, you probably got the odors of the dead body like we did.
Yeah.
But I was a mile away from the airport where it fell.
But the one in Rockaway? Sure. That was a big deal. They still have a memorial every year.
It was disgusting. Yeah. People were going there to loot what they could and everybody on that plane except one person died. And the smell of death was in our neighborhood, and we felt it crash because it was right there. I mean, but those were all the Italians because they all ran the show over at the airports. And by the time the Lufthansa, plane got robbed of all the. Remember the Lufthansa?
Well, I don't remember.
Henry Hill. Well, yeah, that was Henry Hill.
I know. I spoke to him every morning. He told me where dead bodies were buried. Rockaway Parkway and Avenue L. I get into that in the book because he was. God knows he was just. He talk your head off. He was on something. And he was always on something. And he'd call and he'd tell you if he wore pink underwear. And he literally would tell me, like, he goes, Rockaway Parkway and Avenue L. I go, yeah, what about it? He goes, yeah, the bank right there. There's 3 dead bodies in the concrete. I go, it's not a bank. It's an eyeglass store. He goes, think about it.
You think about it.
No, I go, he goes, the night deposit box, it's still there, right? I go, that was a bank. I go, oh, that was a bank. Right. So like right there at Rockaway Park, and then right where I used to wait for the bus every day to go to work was where the Bamboo Lounge was.
I know the Bamboo Lounge. That was part of our hanging turf. You know, and Steve? Who's the guy? Steve, who was in the funny-looking guy.
Steve Buscemi?
Buscemi.
Yeah.
He was from Valley Stream, which was the town right next over from me. But everybody lived in your neck of the woods, in our neck of the woods.
Yeah, it's not the same, I can tell you that.
Well, now it's like a shtetl, with all the temples and like many of the Jews,
Canarsie is different. It's not the same neighborhood.
But we had gangs.
I'll put it this way, I went to go to the liquor store and it was closed at 6:30. And I go, well, why the hell would somebody close the liquor store at 6:30? And the answer was because they got tired of getting robbed. Because as soon as they got a little later, they were getting robbed.
Because down Rockaway Turnpike,
Yeah.
Meadowmere and Inwood, those were some rough places.
Yeah.
But I want to tell you, along with your guys, I was going into family therapy at one point, and we went to this woman, and the appointment before me was a guy, DiBernardo, and he was one of the people that worked for Sammy the Bull Gravano, you know, back in the day. And he was on the porn side, and his family would come in for, you know, porn therapy.
It's
and all
funny
of a
because they
sudden
just
he
had
went
the porn
missing.
award. They just had the ABN award.
I know. But you want to know something? I want you to know that he stopped coming, and he was one of the ones who was murdered, you know, where Sammy the Bull, right? He was the one who did it for what was the Gotti.
Yeah,
that was Gotti's guy. So like 13 of them, I think, were like buried like over under a house, like what you're talking about, where the bank was.
Well, when Henry Hill came on the radio in person, I was in charge of Henry because I dealt with him every day on the phone, and I was told to get him drunk. So me and Henry Hill drank half a bottle of Johnny Walker Red in the green room. So I got him lit, and he came on, and then afterwards the E channel they went, and this was my idea. They did the Walk of Death, where Henry Hill got in the car and they drove around Brooklyn and shit. And Henry pointed out all the places where the dead bodies were. And it was so fucking morbid. It was so disturbing that it never aired. So, and somewhere in Howard Stern's archives, in the E channel archives, there's a Walk of Death with Henry Hill through Brooklyn. And then they never aired it. And I was kind of bummed because it was my idea, but you know, they
do tours like that, you know.
But like no, but he's specific. He's like the guy. Joe Franklin's over there, and Harry Burns is over there,
and DiBernardo.
Yeah, DiBernardo's over there. Yeah, if you dig just a little to the left, you'll find them. You know, and it never aired. But so, you said something about Spike Lee. So now they let you go. Did you see it coming?
Okay, now Spike Lee.
Oh no, hold on. So did you know it was coming?
No.
So you were like, fuck.
No, they basically fired me, and they said, and I remember Richard Kirschenbaum, who was the head of the advertising agency. He said, you know, there's evolution and revolution, and we weren't done with our revolution. We were far from done because it was such a great campaign. But Spike Lee, and I don't know if you remember this, he was going to be the director, and it was, the name of the campaign was Freedom is Freedom, and it was wear number 3. And it was so insulting to the brand that they're touting the fact that they're number 3. And it was a terrible, terrible campaign. And I remember Spike Lee saying, you know, about me, I never said anything bad about Spike Lee. I was upset that he was coming in and it was going to be his stuff. But he's like, she had her moment. He was like that. And I was like, you know, fuck you, Spike Lee. You know, I didn't ever do anything to you. And yes, I had my moment, but I'm a part of the whole beginnings of Snapple.
Yeah, no, your face is synonymous. Hudson, can we pull? We worked really hard this morning trying to get this set up. And I know, Hudson, we were able to pull up a picture of Wendy when she was a Snapple lady? Where we tried, where we're all morning we're sweating to get this. I changed the whole configuration of everything just so we can get this. And now look, but now we got there.
Oh, how sweet! I should have brought. Like, there's tons of stuff. Thank you. That's so nice that you worked so hard to do this for me. But I did end up doing about 38 commercials for TV. I ended up doing about the same for radio, and I ended up having a wonderful run, you know, but much like Superman, which is what I was saying before, it was very, very hard for me to do anything else afterwards.
Whoa, because, look at all the stuff that you're in. Look at all that.
The Snapple lady, and people, wanted me to be the Snapple lady, and and what I
You're
want to
typecast
tell
pretty
you,
much, really, after that. Yeah.
and they had warned me, and I did put some money away, and I was smart about it. But what happened to me after is soon after my parents did move to Florida. My father ended up getting sick with Parkinson's and dementia, and I had to go back and forth to Florida. Listen, we get to a certain age, and you want to know something, it becomes our responsibility.
I know.
So I went for many, many years back and forth to Florida to take care of my father, their house, because my mother ended up predeceasing my father at age 73. So I'm like 50 when this is happening. But I worked for Snapple. I do want you to know that I did have 18 years. They couldn't fire me, even though they
Oh, wow.
took me out of the
You
commercials.
still work for the company.
I still worked for the
well, that's
company,
cool.
which was very cool. A lot of people don't recognize, but I recognize that. But I was still answering mail, and I was still a critical part of their PR with their fans.
How much did it change after Quaker Oats took over?
Oh my God! It was
Well, once
a
the corporate, yeah,
It was corporate.
just awful.
It wasn't as it wasn't. Now I will tell you, for corporate, because I didn't like them, and I knew that they didn't like me, because I'm like this Jewish girl from Long Island that came up. I remember the first thing that they had asked me to do was to go maybe to Wisconsin to a big, festival that they were having, and thousands and thousands of people would go to these big state fairs, and they gave me probably 100 chairs, because I would invite all of the people that had written me letters. I would invite them to come over and to meet me and feed them and have food for them at these state fairs. So we were very cool about stuff like that. So they gave me all these great beach chairs, and the guy looks at me with hatred from Quaker, and he goes, "Do not give away the chairs." And the minute I got there, I had them eat, hang out, and I gave every chair away.
Good.
And
Yeah.
you know what? You just don't talk to people. Be nice. You know what I'm saying?
It's not that hard.
It wasn't that hard, but they hated me from that, because I never listened to anything that they really would tell me to do, because
Yeah.
I had a brand to take care of that they had no idea. And you know what? Those beach chairs, it was like nothing to have fans that were completely devoted for the rest of their life,
yeah.
because they had now a Snapple beach chair.
Well, it's also went free advertising.
And it was everywhere. It was everywhere.
Well, speaking of sponsors, I gotta at least mention Professional Tax Alliance. It's tax season, everybody. If you want professional tax done, you want people that are professionals doing your taxes, not H&R Block, not any of those other people. You want people that you can relate to. And at Professional Tax Alliance, they give you that personal tax help. They helped me. They got me out of like a pinch and a half. Like Professional Tax Alliance, they have so many great people there. Rich Prinzi, who is, well, he's basically, this is his house. So
well, it's great to know, because I just moved here like you did,
yeah,
and I have all my stuff in New Jersey, and
Well,
at some point I
yeah.
gotta
Well,
start getting local people.
No, you definitely want to go to Professional Tax Alliance. They're the best. They will put your mind at ease. Okay, because it's a lot of tension when you're getting your taxes done, and you panic, and then you what you owe or am I getting back? It's a pain in the ass. So Professional Tax Alliance, thank you for everything, and thank you for coming on.
Oh my God, we're gonna have to do it again, because we didn't even touch certain things that we need to talk about.
Well, then we'll have it. We'll have to do it
We'll
again
have
because
to do an
because
ongoing.
those guys out there, they got to do their land work. Yeah, I don't want. They were nice that they paused it, so I don't want to. They're getting paid by the hour.
I want you people to know this is an unusual place where we're sitting right now, because the fact, leaf blowing I get, but because we're in the desert, there's so much astroturf here instead of lawn.
Oh yeah, you have astroturf. Yeah,
I have, which is one less bill.
Yeah, no shit. No, but it's funny. I moved to the desert and it's 50 degrees out. The fuck, it's raining. It's like it never rained this much. I'm not complaining because everybody in New York right now is on lockdown because it's freezing
And we're going to get that tremendous storm.
Yeah.
And in Massachusetts, we're going to get like 18 inches at my house. So I'm like worried about that right now. But it'll be fun. And me and you get to see each other this summer because I'm going to go to Massachusetts and you're going to hang out in your neck of the woods.
Yeah. Yeah. No, from what I understand, you need to get the flock out of this town in the summer.
110, 120 degrees. I am, not a fan.
Melting. Oh, but it's a dry heat. I hate when fucking people say that. Fuck you. It's a dry heat.
But it does make such a difference. But the parking
hot is hot.
But the parking here, I do have to say, because it's on different levels and it's covered parking, it's not so horrible to get into a car.
No, okay, you're right. I know.
So I'm gonna give you, that.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I will definitely have you back.
Okay.
We'll have to do a part 2.
Because we want to talk about Gary. We want to talk about Howard, how everybody moved on, when Rush died, when Howard, changed, when you left, when I left. We have a lot to
absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it.
I love you.
I love you too. All right,
so
everybody.
Much.
Thank you very much. Got a lot of big plans for Aftershock. It's back, and we're going to have some fun with it. So thank you very much.